Hello, everyone. Welcome back to another episode of The Progressive World. I hope you're having a decent weekend and Sunday. And as always, I'm joined by my co-host, Sam. So for this episode, we have a lot of mini country briefs. So I'm going to pass it back to you, Sam, to just give us a quick kind of rundown, and then I'll mention what else we have in today's episode.
Sure. Yeah, we to be honest, we're trying a new format, and we're gonna cover a lot of bigger stories, but briefly on different countries. First, we're gonna look at a couple of Commonwealth nations: Britain, Canada, New Zealand. Then we're gonna look at European nations, mostly focusing on German and French elections. Pretty much, not mostly, completely. Then we're going to look at the Middle East and Caucasus region and look at some of the military and political development in the region. For example, we had the first military woman in Saudi army. We had some tensions between Iran and Azerbaijan, between Iran and Kurdistan. So we're going to focus on these issues and energy crisis in Lebanon and some other, I think, interesting stuff.
Very nice. And as always, we'll include timestamps right down below in the comment section. And in the first story that we're going to do UK one, so we're going to talk about the gas crisis as well, which I guess is kind of a Europe story, or the temporary gas crisis, as I've heard one analyst say. But yeah, and then we're just going to do a quick Progressive World online and talk about AOC right after we recorded the last episode and talked about the whole budget bill and everything. And because of that, the squad and AOC perhaps not voting and preventing funding for Iron Dome. But of course, we knew that the vote was going to happen. Well, while we were recording, that did happen. And AOC had her whole thing with putting herself as president. And then Glenn Greenwald made a video. So we're going to talk about all that. And then Brianna had another super interesting, fascinating, I would say kind of hard to follow discussion at times with Gerald Horne. It was a 1 hour discussion that was just packed, no fat or nothing. They went right to it. And then we'll finish with just one or two fun tweets.
By the way,
can you hear me well? My microphone is making some noises.
No, I can
All
hear
good.
fine.
Okay.
I don't know about the recording, but did you the Gerald Horne interview? Just a very quick question. I felt like that was the whole conversation. Nothing was behind the paywall. That's the feeling I got.
Yeah. I think for this time she did that. It was 1 hour and 5 minutes. Yeah, from the beginning until the end. But I mean, they didn't waste any time. Yeah, for sure.
It was. Yeah, I think it was. It got derailed. Oh, well, we'll talk about it.
Yeah.
Anyway.
Yeah, okay.
All right.
But yeah, why don't you get us started?
Sure. So let's start with our Commonwealth nation briefs. We start with Britain, which has been experiencing a couple of different crises, and not so much crisis, I suppose. But let's first start with the gas crisis. The gas crisis is a crisis that has gripped pretty much all of Europe, not just UK, but UK is experiencing it far more than others. Let me just the very brief and headline of this issue is basically that the gas prices has soared significantly in the UK, almost 3,000 times. But
wait, 3,000%? You mean not 3,000 times?
Sorry, yes, 3,000%. Sorry,
I guess that's what it is.
But yeah, or 3 times. I don't know. But
no, I think they've increased 3 times, which would be 300%. If they've increased like threefold, that's 300%.
Exactly, 300. Yes. We are talking about wholesale prices. So the government has some level of control over gas prices for the households, for individual consumers, but wholesale prices is the price which companies buy gas prices at, and gas companies are basically all going bankrupt. It's pretty crazy. From 70 gas companies now, there may be less than 10 in a few months.
Why are they going bankrupt though?
Because they have to buy because they pay the wholesale price, but then they have to because of price controls, then they have to still sell the gas to the public at a certain price that is not profitable for them.
Okay, so like energy company. Okay, so like electricity or like energy companies. Okay.
Gas companies. Yes, we are talking about.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, energy company. You're right. They use it to generate electricity. But analysts, this is from, by the way, Open Democracy. This paragraph, I looked at a lot of articles. I think this is best briefly summarizes the issue. Analysts have attributed the skyrocketing prices to a perfect storm of factors, including depleted European stock after prolonged winter, delayed maintenance by domestic gas field operators, lower gas supplies from Russia, and a strong demand for liquefied natural gas in Asia and Latin America. It's also important to note that UK more than many European nations had been relying on wind and gas for energy, and the wind basic, I don't know what you call that. The wind has been less like the wind in the UK this year has been less wind since 1960s.
Yeah, it's been less windy, I guess.
Less windy since 1960s.
Especially so where they have, I guess, where they have the
wind turbines.
Yeah.
But also the reason why UK relied on gas so much was because of the North Sea gas and oil fields, but the production from there has plummeted. Also, there is a electricity. I don't know what's the technical term, grid connection between France and UK, and that's been experiencing issues, and they're like repairing that. So also UK does not have enough storage for liquefied gas, which government and previous governments have been criticized for not having enough storage to store gas. And UK famously has pretty much completely phased out all its coal generating facilities. So that's why they are facing some energy shortages. And even if they do, like all the coal mines, if they restart working right now in the UK, they can only add 2% to the energy output of the country. And furthermore, this was a bit confusing to me, so somebody can correct me. I was watching these Channel 4 and BBC News articles about the fact that government is saying we do not have a fuel shortage, we have a lorry driver shortage. So there is this other issue which is going on, which is basically partially due to the fact that due to Brexit and lack of visa for lower workers, there are not enough lorry drivers to deliver the fuels to gas stations.
Yeah. Okay. So sorry. So this last point that you made, you're not talking about the gas anymore. And here you're talking. This was a separate issue.
That's about fuel. Yeah. That's not fuel, about the gas.
Yeah.
That's
no, because I just
separate.
Because I wanted to come back to the gas price.
Yeah.
To the gas price. I mean, it reminds me a tiny bit. You remember just a month and a half ago, 2 months ago, gasoline prices were going up, like fuel prices were going up in the US. And just like you pointed out, this analyst said the perfect storm, or sorry, whoever the article that you read talk about the perfect storm.
The article is written by Laurie McFarlane, and I think her or him, Laurie, I don't know what, I think it's a female name. Great job of it analyzes it's a deep dive on why privatization under Thatcher led to this. Anyway, sorry.
Okay, interesting. But yeah, the part we're talking about the perfect storm, and then so demand going up in Asia. So this is also because of slightly post-COVID in the economy, so demand has gone up. So all of this, I mean, I was listening to another analyst, so it's kind of like a temporary crisis, and I think the fact that they did it probably has a lot to do with also the geopolitics with Russia, because there is another because they're saying that the Russians are not providing them enough because they get most of their gas from Russia, and there is this other pipeline that Russia is just waiting for Germany, I believe, to approve. And so yeah, they could be, if that comes into, some of it could even have to do with that, just like pressuring Europe to okay that. And then I hear like some jabs being taken at renewables and all this. I'm interested to see how much the wind one, how much of a factor that played, or it's really the gas one. And I mean, and a lot of it has to do with the circumstance of, economies reemerging a bit. And of course, Russia and the geopolitics there. So kind of the same thing. So yeah, all of these put together. So it's just like it's a little bit of an interesting geopolitics crisis. But yeah, a lot of people, sorry, just gonna finish with this. But yeah, of course, gonna hurt a lot of people. However, I heard that in France and the UK, I think you mentioned it, in Germany, they're gonna subsidize and help households with the cost of gas being up, especially if it's a cold winter and all that in Europe this year. But yeah.
No, a caveat on the Russian thing. I think the Russian, first of all, from my understanding, this is not something I took a deep look into, but Russia is always pretty much willing to sell its gas to highest bidders. So I think this is a bit of a fear mongering and stuff. And the fact is, Russia is finding more lucrative markets in Asia and in the Middle East, and maybe that, like, it's not Russians trying to play geopolitics. Maybe it's just the issue of supply. But I think you were talking about Nord Stream 2. That's a weird one, because a couple of months ago I thought that's 100% okay to be finished, because it's very like few miles or kilometers left of it to be finished. So, and with the whole AUKUS deal, which we're going to do a video about, and with a lot of others, with the whole, I think, more importantly, with the way US withdrew from Afghanistan, I do think we're going to see, Europe needs to really figure out, this energy crisis pretty much happens every year with Europe, so they need to find like a solution, basically.
Yeah, and they are really relying on gas right now, especially, and they probably will increasingly as they try to phase out fuel more and stuff.
I mean, in the UK is the gas century, I think.
I mean, the UK, if I'm not mistaken, it said that 50% of its energy comes from gas. I mean, at least some sectors, I think for electricity.
More so even.
Yeah, maybe. I mean, even that's a lot. Just from gas, 50%, that's a lot already.
From what I understood, above 70% came from gas and wind.
Oh, it's interesting. And let me just gonna add a little this. So if I'm not mistaken, so Norway, which also of course exports gas, but them, luckily for them, they generate almost 90% of their electricity from water. So I mean, they just have like the best situation there. I mean, in Canada, Quebec,
low population, my friend.
No, I don't know where you got that.
I'm joking.
But
low population and a lot of money. But no,
and some luck.
I found out about Iran recently, and I found it so surprising that the wave, I don't know what they call it, the system that they generate electricity from waves of the sea and all that. Apparently that plays a huge role, and it can be a very significant contributor to a country's energy.
I see. Like, no, I was talking more like hydropower with like, like a dam, that kind of.
I think, that's what I mean. Yeah. That's like what I mean by wave is water moving.
No, but like, like building dams, I guess you need dams. But yeah, anyway, Norway, I'm guessing they're probably not being hurt by this crisis, as their fund just grows and grows. In our last video that we did, I actually put the video of the website. It's called like thefund.no or something, that just shows the number, the investment
just shows off their wealth to rest of the world.
Yeah,
people from Angola googling, looking with regret and envy. So okay, shall I move on to the other stories?
Yes, please.
Yeah, so we have two other stories. Like I think they're smaller ones about the UK. One was the Labour Conference. Labour Conference started, and this is something we covered previously, that Keir Starmer, or as BBC and Guardian loves to call him, Sir Keir Starmer, decided to back off of his proposed change to leadership elections, or for our audience's sake, let's call it primary elections within the Labour Party system. I think, well, I'll get to, he backed
and
off.
explain what he wanted to do again, please, sorry.
Exactly. The old system was similar to electoral college system, in which members of the parliament, their vote is counted as 1/3. Then you have unions, their vote is counted as 1/3. Then you have party members, who are majority of the people who are paying members. There's normal members working in councils or just being a paid member. Their vote counted as 1/3 as well. So you had basically, like, let's say around 120 Labour MPs have the same level of, their vote has the same value as 100,000 people, 200,000 people, 300,000 people, party members. That was the old system, changed less than a decade ago, and was seen as one of the major factors that led to the rise of Jeremy Corbyn, and saw the rise of party membership significantly, and all that, the one member, one vote system. Keir Starmer's proposal was sort of going back to the old system, but even kind of worse. From some of the explanations I heard, they were even going to push the threshold to be nominated higher and all that. But he backed off, and it's not clear why. There was a huge, I mean, it caused a major civil fight in the Labour Party, and everybody, including the right of the party, blamed him for distracting from a Labour conference that could focus on real issues to civil war. So that was one factor. The Labour left was going berserk, and they were saying that, you know, like, even if you pass it NEC, we're going to fight you on the conference floor and all that. So that's another reason. But the third reason, and the reason I think is the most likely one, which was in Owen Jones's interview with one of Labour Party members was discussed, was that it's probably, Keir Starmer is probably a bit of a, he's not very intelligent, and the people around him know that he has very little electoral chances, and people around him are right-wing, and he realized that the changes they are bringing him are the changes to get rid of him, because at the same time you have you have 2 or 3 members, right-wing members of Labour Parliament, really like Labour members that would easily fit into a Conservative party. One of them, a former head of the student unions, his name escapes my mind. Anyway, they are raising significant funds, and there is a significant speculation that they're probably going to run for a leadership election. So I think Keir Starmer at the last second realized that he's basically digging his own grave and backed out of the whole proposal.
Man, wow, that's fascinating, because I mean, even the other reasons were compelling, because he pissed off so many different and different kind of people with this factions. But yeah, this is so instead of kind of securing his own place, it could have been used to, he thought, could have been used to remove him and replace him with somebody even more to the right than him. And he is already, I mean, you know, he's already pushing it as much as possible, and while being a member of the Labour Party, which is supposed to be lefty.
He's not even a real like right-wing Labour or Blairite. He's more of a very, somebody described it, I think, again, the person Owen Jones interviewed described him as a former civil servant, and I think that fits the bill very, like, he's a civil servant type figure. He's not really of an idea or originality. He has none.
Is he like Pete Buttigieg?
Yeah, well, Pete Buttigieg without the CIA sort of dark like sort of charisma that, you know, I've probably, you know, helped, you know, Taliban and other groups, you know, smuggle and kill people. Like, you know, Pete Buttigieg, you can
Yeah.
see that there is no soul. But I think Keir Starmer has a soul. It's just not much of a good one. But so it's just
Yeah.
these are all jokes. But
But
well, sorry,
yeah.
I just wanted to just to couple of facts I had under if these leadership changes had gone through under these leadership changes during the last 3 decades, I believe no woman, no person of minority would have been eligible to even become a candidate of these elections. So yeah, so that,
Well,
I mean, just you can guess how
yeah.
popular these changes were.
Oh, I see. I see. Okay. Interesting. And yeah, he apparently released
Oh,
his 14,000 word essay. And based on what I've heard, there's not much
yes.
to it. So that's that. And if I'm not mistaken, while Jeremy
And
Corbyn was the
10
leader,
promises again.
yeah,
Yeah.
and apparently they're extremely like, generic that anybody, some right wingers have commented apparently that they agree with everything that he said
They
because
agree with
they're
9 of them, yes.
yeah, because it's just so
And the
generic.
other one.
But when Jeremy Corbyn was the leader, he put out like some kind of manifesto or something, no, or like the Labour Party put out his manifesto or something. I remember they had put out a publication that was well
Every part
received.
in the UK,
Yeah, they all
in the
put it out,
UK,
right?
every, I think after every conference, each party
Hmm.
puts out or before an election, they put out a manifesto. But it's usually, you know, as valuable like as the
Yeah,
it's less valuable than the paper it's written on in terms of like nobody keeps there. I mean, Jeremy Corbyn, I think, was an exception, but you know.
yeah. No, exactly. But okay, yeah,
All right, shall I move on to the last story? This is a
please.
tiny one in terms of UK, but it kind of, I think it would be a good segue to our next country brief. You had UK is limiting Chinese businesses, specifically in the field of nuclear energy. So the government could announce plans to take a stake in Sizewell Sea Power Station, alongside the French state-backed power giant EDF as early as next month, ahead of the COP26 climate summit. That would be likely to result in China General Nuclear (CGN), sort of a state-backed energy company in China, which currently has a 20% stake in Sizewell being removed from the project. So this is a further indication of UK sort of
Hmm.
limiting its relations with China. We saw that with 5G debate in the UK as well a lot. And
True, they had that
it
debate there
seems,
as well. The debate,
and
yeah,
well, there was a whole, whoa, it was a big issue. There was
yeah.
quite a big backlash from conservative backbenchers against the move and all that. So I think like we are gonna see further. This is all, I think, part of a trend of UK increasingly getting closer to US and limiting its relations with China and possibly even European Union and other nations. So I thought, let me just, sorry, another point I wanted to add. Ministers are closing in on a deal that could kick China off a project to build a 20 billion nuclear power station on the Suffolk coast and pump in tens of millions of pounds of taxpayer cash instead, a move that would heighten geopolitical
Hmm.
tension. So as you can see, when it comes to these type of things, taxpayer money is easily spent.
Yeah.
But you know, other things could be education is no.
Yeah.
Anyway,
Well, our
but
tweet, one of our
yeah,
tweets in the today's show, Bernie Sanders makes the same obvious point.
point. Yes. Sorry. Yeah. I mean, it is obvious, but I thought I made.
No, for sure. No,
Yeah.
no. I said
Yeah.
that before you
But
said that. I just said
yeah.
that in
Yes.
anticipation of you, actually.
Yeah.
So it's your fault.
No, fair enough. But yeah. But all right. So that was my country brief on
Nice,
UK.
nice.
Anything you want to
No,
ask or
not
add?
anything more than what I've said. No.
All right. So shall we move on to the next Commonwealth nation?
Please.
All right. Well, this is a very short story. Well, a couple of short stories from Canada. We had a sort of a prison exchange type of thing in Canada. I think this kind of segues nicely to our last news story about UK. If people want to check out that video separately, Hawaii or Hawaii or Hawaii.
Huawei.
I don't know how.
Huawei. Huawei.
Hawaii. I
Hua-
could never pronounce this
Huawei. I
company's
mean,
name.
that's how I said it.
Hawaii. Yes, Hawaii's CEO, the daughter of the CEO. I
Yeah.
mean, sorry, I can't open the link for some reason right now.
Yeah.
Because,
So she was caught in, I mean, they took her, she was in Vancouver, right? When
she
the
was
FBI
arrested.
came or CIA came after her, yeah.
Yeah, she was arrested due to can you say the company's name?
Huawei, because of Trump was at, war with the whole 5G and Huawei and all that. Yeah, not allowing them to build their 5G networks in the US.
But oh no. The specific reason she was arrested was Hawaii's was accused of sharing sensitive technology with Iran that was sanctioned. So that was the specific reason she was arrested. She was her name is Meng Wanzhou, who has spent nearly 3 years in house arrest in Canada. She returned home late Saturday, ending a prolonged stay. At the same time, China also released two Canadian prisoners who China claimed to be, obviously working for foreign governments, but most people think that they were probably journalists, and I mean that's the mainstream narrative.
Yeah.
Again, like if you're a spy, being a journalist usually is the best cover, or academic. But I personally, I don't
professor,
know. I doubt they were. Yeah. Michael Kovrig and Michael Spavor. These guys got released. And it seems it was exchanged. And by the way, it was very interesting because Trudeau didn't get so much shit for this, but Biden did. Biden got criticized by a lot of conservative Republican members that, this is a prisoners exchange and blah, blah, blah. Your usual don't negotiate with terrorists. So that was one development in Canada. Another
very interesting. I hadn't seen that.
Yeah, all right. Any thoughts?
No. Yeah, very interesting. I hadn't seen that. It was a story I followed a little bit. So
yeah. And other news in Canada, Justin Trudeau was criticized by the right for being for Canada for being left out of the UK, US, Australia, or as it's known, AUKUS deal. But he said that he sort of leaned into the whole we have no plans to become a nuclear power, and this is not an energy, sort of went with the whole climate environmental sort of vibe in his response. So
does that even make much sense? That.
If you look at his larger, I think
because the deal was a security deal, right? The deal was a security deal, and also to build these submarines, these nuclear powered submarines for Australia. Is that what the deal is?
Yeah, the deal includes three crucial parts, but the most important part is the nuclear powered submarines. But I mean, to be honest, I don't think, if I'm making this video about the deal, and one of the reasons it's taking so long, it seems like the deal was sort of made on a fly. Like Australians kind of complained that they weren't too happy with the French deal, and then UK sort of passed the complaint to the US. So I
it was perhaps think a bit of a Trump-like move then.
Oh,
so it was a bit half-assed. So. Well, last time when I brought that up, I guess you were a different part of your research. So you said no, not really. Because you remember, that was like the French foreign minister's first defense reaction, like PR comeback.
Yeah. No. I just don't agree that Trump differed from Obama or Biden in any like he's rhetorically yes, but like he left the Iran deal, for example, right? And now Biden undercuts the French deal, like and Jimmy Carter like made a deal. Jimmy Carter, no, I think it was Jimmy Carter who made a deal with the Soviets, but then Congress didn't pass
Okay,
it.
in this
Like
sense,
it's
I get you.
like
Yeah.
everybody, like so in that sense,
No.
I didn't mean to say
Yeah.
yeah, but no, I think through those criticisms are unfair, but his response is also bullshit.
Yeah.
Like it's just like I think if he was contacted, he would be up for it.
Yeah.
So I don't know. It's like it's like a threesome. You never say no. But
Okay, we'll take 2 nuclear-powered jet skis, but can't do submarines. That's too much.
Are there any nuclear-powered moose by any chance? Because
What about snorkeling and scuba diving equipment? That we
I'm
can
really
do.
sorry about this, but can I have a maple syrup-based nuclear?
Yeah, I don't know what Canada would do with nuclear-powered
Sorry for
submarines.
the a
Yeah.
lot of stereotype jokes. By the way,
No, but seriously,
just
what would you do with that as a nation? I guess yeah. I mean, I know.
no,
I
but
guess
Canada does have
Yeah, I
Pacific
know
and
exactly.
Russia and
So
China.
yeah,
Yeah, but I would.
to
By the
fight
way,
other
on
countries.
a, I think on a possibly most important news from Canada, the great Canadian comedy legend. I should have mentioned that last week. I forgot. Norm Macdonald passed away. Who was he was a legend in my view. One of the
I see.
greatest Canadian comedians. Helped my political awakening. He used to do SNL Weekend Updates, and he one of the bravest men ever.
Oh, really
So
interesting.
I'll just fit that into the Canadian brief as well. But if you don't have anything to add, we can move on to the next.
Please do.
The next one is a very short one about New Zealand. Again, as a result of the AUKUS deal, New Zealand had to respond, and Jacinda Ardern said that no nuclear submarine, no nuclear powered or no nuclear carrying submarines would be allowed in New Zealand's waters, as it was the policy before, it seems. She was also criticized by the right for, well, how come do you not feel like there was intelligence failure for not being part of the deal and so forth? And she said no, because I think everybody knows our government's policy, our government and our nation's long-standing policy on the issue. So I'm not surprised that we weren't approached about this. And again, even though I have a lot of criticisms of her, even though she's quite leftist, I find her to be a very, very capable politician in terms of handling questions and handling situations.
I mean, relatively, especially compared, to others, 100%. So far, based on what I've seen as well,
compared to Biden, not remembering.
And Biden, I'm still. But honestly, I feel like nowadays, whatever because yes, I also saw all those interviews before he became president and before that last run where he made no sense. But nowadays, I mean, at least when he reads off like the prompter and everything, he's not as bad as people make it to be. I mean, I feel like
sure, yes. Yeah. No, I agree.
He can still act and perform.
I think he's pumped up on a lot of drugs, to be honest.
Good for him.
Yeah, fair enough. Yeah, I'm all for legalization. But
he's 80 something.
Yeah, exactly. At that age, if you don't do drugs, you're crazy. I would say I love some of his moments when he goes badass and like
and he still does that.
Of him. Yeah, like I think they threatened to sue him over what was it? I don't know, but he just went, "Bring it on." What you gonna like? It was like very clean Eastwood, like dirty Harry moment. But yeah.
And he leads them to say a lot of stupid stuff. I mean, Katie Halper brought out that whole clip about Haiti and everything.
Oh yeah,
we spoke about that. So,
oh my god, that was great. If they disappear in English. Anyway, yeah. All right, just to keep it brief, shall I move on to the European section?
Yeah, please.
All right, so with the European section, not much to say. Two very short sort of, I think, headlines. Hopefully we do a deeper dive later on. So first on Germany, it seems that just a few days before the elections, like I think the elections start basically today, polls started to close somewhat. Merkel started appearing more to promote the CDU. By the way, I have this VPN. I set up my VPN on Germany just to see like online advertisement, and like online advertisement of CDU was crazy. I don't think the socialists were spending half as much. Like
Interesting.
all YouTube videos, every website I went to when I was on the German IP address, it was fascinating. It was fascinating. I did not understand the adverts, by the way, but there was a lot of Armin Laschet talking and doing this with his hands, so I'm sure it was very good.
Very interesting.
Most analysts from DW and France 24 were saying that most probably we're going to have long negotiations. We're not going to have a government until Christmas. At the moment, polls are looking that we're going to have a three-party coalition, although the reliability of polls, as we all know, are very limited, especially in a country like Germany, where it's just so federal. There's going to be all these local factors and then international factors. So I'm not. I think actually, I don't know. I'm a bit more inclined to think we're going to have a. I don't know. I think we're going to have a strong government, but most analysts said that it's probably going to be a weak government with a like three-party coalition.
I see.
Also, some analysts pointed out that France may slightly prefer Olaf Scholz because he's a bit more pro-European looking compared to Armin Laschet, but the differences are negligible at best. So yeah, that's the latest on the German election.
Yeah, great. Yeah, that's today. So I'm guessing tomorrow the results will probably come out.
Yeah, and I'm gonna look like a complete fool, hopefully, because I just made a tiny prediction.
No,
it
that's
was
good.
just a guess.
Takes guts. Yeah. Nice.
Yeah, all right. So shall I move on to the?
Yeah, do France, and then I had one Switzerland story that I actually forgot to even put there, and they've just passed to legalize same-sex marriage. So after your France one, I'll just mention that one quickly.
Yeah, and it's a perfect combination of France and Germany in a way. So it was something that I thought I'd point out because something I like to highlight and I like to know more about personally, but I'm lacking in this a lot. But there was the French Greens. There is this lady, Sandrine Rousseau, I believe. Rousseau, I don't know how you probably know to pronounce her name better. She described
Rousseau,
herself
like the philosopher,
Rousseau?
like the political philosopher.
Right, okay.
Yeah, Rousseau.
Okay.
Sandrine
All right,
Rousseau.
great. I don't know if she's related in any way.
I doubt it. I think there are probably a lot of Rousseaus. And wasn't Rousseau Swiss anyway and moved to France? Anyway, go on.
Yeah. She's described as a eco-feminist or a punk eco-feminist, and she's become a bit of a becoming a bit of a firebrand in the primary elections for the Greens in the France. Her radical punk ecology has won support among activists on the left and been attacked by far right as dangerous to the French nation. A figurehead of the Me Too movement in France. She's got that on her side as well. She has said, I think we are at a crossroads of civilizations, and the only way to, we need to basically fight Marine Le Pen and her right-wing agenda more actively. What I mean by punk ecology is impertinence, Rousseau said, adding that she wanted representatives voted into parliament who were so engaged in environmental issues that they wouldn't cave in. People are conscious of the climate crisis and what is at stake. Polling this month found for Le Monde found 82% of French people wanted a swift action to protect the environment. So all of this is working in her favor. Rousseau 49 has upset predictions in the Greens primary race, which remains hard to call. For months, Yannick Jadot, again, apologies for butchering the name, a member of the European Parliament who's seen as having a more centrist stance, is polling higher than Rousseau, was expected to be chosen as presidential candidate when results are announced next week. But but his lead on Rousseau is narrower than expected. So again, I mean, to be fair, I get a bit of an AOC Obama vibe of her, that it's a bit performative and all that. But she's at the moment pushing the Green Party further to the left, further to the environmental issues, and that's a positive thing. So I thought, we focus on. By the way, the French person who I couldn't remember last week was Mélenchon, if I'm not mistaken.
Okay, well, I don't remember what that was about.
Oh, he was like, he's a French, like Bernie Sanders, Jeremy Corbyn,
okay.
and probably more left than either of them, Mélenchon. And he's quite good. I like him.
But yeah,
anti-EU.
I see. But yeah, so like there was the election in Norway where they said that climate change is possibly going to play a big role. And there it seemed like I guess it did play a big role. But I mean, the party that was the most extreme on cutting off, cutting oil production, all that, they didn't win. It'll be interesting to see the Germans, what happens. I mean, all parties in Germany, of course, they're all for addressing climate change, but we talked about how some are offering government and other offering like more market-oriented solutions, and now this in France. So the narrative is that climate change has become increasingly important in Europe. But yeah, we'll have to see when like push comes to shove what voters, who they will vote for in like the coming elections, and in the next few years, and see if it really does become as important as analysts are kind of saying. Some analysts are saying in parts of the media.
Yeah. I mean, there is this thing that, I mean, just the caveat polling. A very interesting case study is the British election in early 90s between John Major and Neil Kinnock, where people say they care about a lot of things, but when it comes to voting, they tend to vote in their economic interest. So with the German and French, all of that is very interesting to me to see what will come out.
Yeah, definitely. So I don't know if you have anything else, so I'll just do the Switzerland story quickly.
Sure, yeah.
So Switzerland, based on initial results, so I have a DW article in front of me, Swiss voters have approved same-sex marriage. So in Switzerland, same-sex marriage actually didn't exist. Since the 90s, you could enter into partnerships, but that was it. But in December, the Swiss Parliament backed.
What's the legal and technical difference between partnership and marriage?
You just a lot of rights that are reserved for like when you're married, you don't get. Yeah. And so now they can also adopt children. And apparently that didn't exist. So Swiss lawmakers had voted in December to legalize same-sex marriage, but then conservative and right wings went and collected enough votes, so more than 50,000 signatures, which launched a referendum. Yeah. So the referendum has happened, and early results show 64% voted yes to legalizing same-sex marriage, while 36% voted no. So yeah, and now same-sex marriage has become legalized, most likely in Switzerland, and adopting children.
I mean, if there are legal differences between marriage and partnership, I think that's a great thing. I wonder, are there any differences because I know Switzerland, they have at least four different, I think 5 specifically different ethnic groups with linguistic differences. Are there any like differences, like Italians are more Catholic or Germans are more Protestant? I don't know.
Oh, very, very good question. That could easily be the case. However, the Italian population is very much a minority. Like the Italian region is small. The biggest ones are the German-speaking Swiss,
French,
and then the Romand. Yeah, the Romands, what they call the French-speaking ones. But yeah, Very good question about
The
religion. I don't know
Romans, the Romans
Roma.
are the Swiss original people in the mountains, right?
Mm,
That
I
they
don't know about
speak.
that. I really don't know about that, but it refers to
Oh, so
when it refers to the provinces and the cantons, they call it, that speak French. I hear it. I'm using it in that context right now. So yeah, I don't know the
oh, I thought
historical
there is a
background.
minority that are Swiss as well that speak a very specific dialect of French or something. I don't know.
No, no. I mean, Swiss French is actually very similar to French, to France's French, sorry, to like Paris, kind of, I would say,
Mm.
kind of. Whereas German,
Mainstream.
from what I understand, German, like Swiss German, is a bit different than German is German.
Oh
But
yeah.
I mean,
Oh yeah.
I don't speak a
I
word,
mean,
so I couldn't tell you really, but based on what I
yeah,
heard.
but I've been to Germany for long. I spent a quite a long time there. But besides, like linguistically speaking, from what I understand, German language has not even within Germany has not is still centralized or
Hmm.
unified. Like Bavarian German can differ quite significantly from other types of German.
Yeah.
So that would make. But while French went through a very rigid process of
Hmm.
centralization through newspapers, and they destroyed all the patios, local languages.
Yeah, no, 100% exactly. That's a fun conversation we had quite a few times before, right? Talking about Chomsky
Oh
and he
yeah, yeah.
talks
Me,
about
I
this a
love
lot. Yeah.
linguistics.
Yeah.
I love linguistics. It's my yeah, one
But
of
yeah.
my favorite topics.
Okay,
Sorry,
let's
sorry
not,
for that
yeah,
tangent.
no, for sure. I brought that up. Let's not derail. But yeah, so same-sex marriage is apparently, and Switzerland's referendum system, I mean, it's just so common. Like people of maybe a few times per year or more, they receive pretty much like an envelope with like this many questions in them, and then yeah, they vote. And yeah,
What was the turnout, by the way? Are the turnouts usually, besides this one, are the turnouts
very
usually
good
higher?
question. And I don't know. So maybe I can follow up on
Oh,
these two interesting questions of yours for a next video.
sure. Okay, so now we are back with our focus. We are going to do some country briefs on nations in Caucasus region, and then we're going to shift towards the Middle East. But there was quite a few interesting developments regarding Armenia and Azerbaijan, which got a little bit, in my view, didn't get as much coverage as other stuff that was discussed at the UN summit. But Armenian uh, uh, officials met with EU's Mr. Borrell in New York, and Armenia also told uh, Armenian officials said ready for constructive dialogue for lasting regional peace. That's what Nikol Pashinyan, the Armenian prime minister, told the UN. So we see that, let me read this. Armenian Prime Minister Nikol Pashinyan has told the United Nations that his country is willing to engage in talks to achieve a sustainable peace in the South Caucasus region following the last year's war with the neighboring Azerbaijan over the region of Nagorno-Karabakh. Armenia is ready for constructive dialogue, which should lead to establishment of sustainable and lasting peace in the region. And so the signals from Armenia seem to be that they're willing for constructive and sustainable peace talks, and these are not the only signals. So we also had reports that Secretary of Armenia's Security Council relations with Turkey should be normalized without preconditions. A lot of hardcore sort of more nationalist factions within Armenia are saying that there should be preconditions set. And as somebody from Iran who's has listened to negotiation news for the longest time ever, I think the Armenian guy's position is correct. But if you're gonna negotiate, no preconditions, in my view, unless it's a war. And of course, there must be a ceasefire before negotiations. Otherwise, I think whenever they discuss preconditions, it's more of a marketing thing than a PR thing rather than a real thing. So yeah, Armen Grigorian told reporters that, yeah, Armenia should try to normalize relations with Turkey without any preconditions. Also, Minsk group, whose Minsk group is the group that is formed of Russia, France, and a few other nations, and is the main international organization pushing for Azeri-Armenian peace. They also met with Azerbaijani officials and Armenian officials, and they said they had positive and constructive talks with all of them. So, these are all good signs. We had a couple of months ago reports that Iran, Azerbaijan, Turkey, Georgia, Armenia, and Russia may become part of a sort of a economic sort of a pact or economic union of some kind. So I hope, I hope that these are all all of this will lead to something positive, especially because I feel like Nikol Pashinyan is whatever criticism of his foreign policy and stuff, he's not a corrupt politician, and it's good to see these type of politicians sort of flourish. And it's also great to see more regional cooperation in that region, because Caucasus, in my view, is a region that is it's a region more than nations. So I think regional cooperation is always a good thing.
Yeah, definitely. And of course, there was the Nagorno-Karabakh war in the background of all this between Armenia and Azerbaijan about a year ago now.
I mentioned it briefly, but this is all coming as a result of the whole Nagorno-Karabakh war and Nagorno-Karabakh issue overall.
Yeah, and which Armenia kind of lost, I guess some experts
definitely
say, right?
lost,
because they lost control over part of that region, right?
They not only that, they lost the 7 surrounding regions. They lost half of less than half of Nagorno-Karabakh, and they were also forced to allow a corridor from Nakhjavan, with the exclave of Azerbaijan next to Turkish border. So they have to allow a road through Armenia from that exclave to mainland Azerbaijan, which probably will lead to a lot of people think will lead to a gas pipeline from Baku to Turkey.
Interesting.
But if any, I can move on to. So sorry. What did I? Oh,
you just turned off your video. Yeah, there you go.
Oh, sorry. Yeah. I was trying to go full screen. And apologies for that. So I think this is a good segue to. So there has been increased tensions between Iran and Azerbaijan. I mean, I may be exaggerating to an extent. Apparently there was an Iranian military parade or military, military training exercise. It's not clear because they're reporting Iranian ambassadors to Baku, to Azerbaijan, says that the reporting is not clear and is not accurate. So I'm not going to claim anything I don't know. But there were apparently some military actions taken by Iran near the borders with Azerbaijan. And you also had imams are people who lead the Friday prayers in Iran, in Shia religion, and they have a lot of political and cultural influence. And 2 imams of Azeri-speaking cities. There are, by the way, I like to point out, there are more Azeris in Iran than in Azerbaijan, population-wise. And the supreme leader of Iran is of Azeri origins. I am partially Azeri. I believe you are partially Azeri. So you are.
I don't know.
We discussed this before. I know your family background. But yes,
I don't know these things possibly. I'm joking.
Confirm or deny. But like the Iranian Iranian and Turkish culture, especially Iranian Azer culture, are so infused that it is, it's just almost, you're talking about the same thing. But anyways, these 2 imams from Azeri regions in Iran, they were very negative about the Israeli presence in Azerbaijan, because you just mentioned the Nagorno-Karabakh war. One of the factors that played an important role was one of the factors that media at least claimed that played an important role in that war was the Israeli cooperation with Azeri forces and the drone technology that Israel and Turkey had gave to Azerbaijan. And Iran regards any Israeli presence near its borders with suspicious and animosity, obviously due to the nation's rivalry, regional rivalry.
Mm-hmm.
So these two imams hinted that these military parades, trainings may be sort of a show of force against Israel. Although Iranian, as I mentioned, Iranian ambassador said that the reporting about these military exercises were inaccurate to an extent. And he said our relations are as strong as ever, and this has nothing to do with Iranian relations with Baku. So,
I see.
Also, just because it's not just two Iranian imams from two cities, let me just add this. Iranian lawmaker Fada Hossein Maliki, an Iranian lawmaker and a member of Iranian Parliament's National Security and Foreign Policy Committee, has warned the neighboring Republic of Azerbaijan for obstructing transit of goods between Iran and Armenia, and objected to a joint military exercise at the Iranian border by military forces of Azerbaijan, Turkey, and Pakistan. So besides the whole Israeli thing, there are all these tensions being risen between Iran and Azerbaijan, because Azerbaijan is getting slightly closer to Turkey and Pakistan, Sunni nations, and Iran has very strong and close relations with Armenia. And it seems that Azerbaijan, through the corridor, which we mentioned in a previous video about Armenia, there's a corridor between an exclave of Azerbaijan to mainland Azerbaijan. It seems that, Azeris are playing some, there are some tensions there with Iran. Azeri officials obviously deny that they have, they have blocked any transfer of goods between Iran and Armenia, but tensions are rising there.
I see.
All right. So, do you have any questions?
No.
I don't know, anything I should clarify on?
No. Continue.
All right. Okay. So now I think we can move on to Middle East, and I think since we already talked about Iran, let's start our Iran brief. Is that fair?
Yeah, sounds good.
All right, so we're going to do a big deep dive on Iran joining the Shanghai Cooperation Organization, which is a process that's going to take probably 2 years, but is a very, very big deal. And we're going to do, and it includes a lot of different aspects. So we're going to do a big deep dive on that, just like the AUKUS deal. I'll try to it's been my laziness that's been the main cause of delay on that one. But just to mention, Iran became part of Shanghai Cooperation Organization, which is a big organization including Russia and China and India and Pakistan and many other nations. It's been touted as one of the organizations that possibly can challenge AU and even NATO as economic and military blocs. Iran had been lobbying to get into there for 10 years unsuccessfully, but now they managed to get in with this with the backing of Russia and China. So I think that's something definitely
interesting,
worth mentioning.
Definitely.
Also, so as long as we're talking about deals, you also had Iran and IAEA about a month ago. They struck a deal to exchange the hard drives. IAEA is the International Atomic Agency, by the way, just to clarify. They made a deal to exchange the hard drives and the memories of the cameras that are taking videos and are basically inspecting Iranian facilities. So that was a positive sign that Iran is still continuing with IAEA, and the cooperation is still ongoing. Then you had the UN summit, and following the UN summit, you had a bit of a mixed mixed results regarding nuclear stuff, nuclear issues of Iran. Whatever you want to call them. Yeah. So Iranian foreign minister and a spokesperson, they said Iran is not ready yet to return to the negotiation table, but will do so at the first chance. So a bit of a contradictory message, but the Americans and Europeans urged Iran to come back as soon as possible. Iran replied by saying that you're being hypocrites. That you should allow the new governments to formulate its new position. Obama mentioned many times that he can only guarantee, he cannot give guarantee for future governments of US and all that. So, back and forth rhetorically between Iran and US. So you had that.
Because under the new Iranian president, Raisi, the nuclear talks in Vienna have yet to resume then.
Yes. Although there have been indirect talks with European nations, like apparently separately. And I think we mentioned it in a previous video that European leaders said they were mostly positive.
And of course, these whole IAEA deals are very important to hold everything in the meantime.
Yeah, they basically put all the sort of information and all the surveillance of Iran into a black box in case if the deal is revived in future. But listening to analysts, most analysts said that Iran is probably trying to drag its feet to increase its uranium enrichment storage capacity, basically. Also, Iran is right now is going, vaccination is going very well right now. For the last 2 weeks, they are vaccinating about 1 million people a day. They are promising to vaccinate pretty much everybody in 3 to 4 months. A promise probably, that won't be kept, but it's causing a lot of growth. There is a positive reports that Iran's going to experience economic growth. Iran becoming part of the Shanghai Cooperation Organization. So it seems that Iran is dragging its feet because it seems that Iran feels that time is on its side. I would be very cautious because congressional elections are coming up very soon in the US. And as soon as the election season starts, even US Congress is going to take a far, far harsher stance on Iran. On other news, I would add that there was a bit of a controversy over the vaccination thing because the old government, Rouhani government, they came out saying that all these orders are coming in now, but we were the ones that put the orders. The new government is only 2 months old. The supporters of the new government compared the new president to the Moses with his magic stick. I don't know, magic, but and they say he's a genius where every problem is being opened up. Make your own mind about that. On other sort of more geopolitically minded news, I think we should talk about Iran and Iraqi relations, especially Iran and Kurdish minority government of Iraq relations are becoming increasingly hostile. Iran started bombing certain areas on the border, issuing warnings to Kurdish authorities that they should disarm and expel the Kurdish separatist groups that are active in their country. And I think Kurdish authorities are largely sympathetic to Iran, and they don't allow much activities for those groups, but they can't expel them. That's just, for them, that's too much. But you also had a meeting between sort of Israeli officials and Kurdish minority government officials. This was heavily criticized by Iran, and now Iraqi government has issued arrest for 3 people who attended that sort of gathering. So the tensions between Iran and Kurdistan is rising in a similar fashion to Azerbaijan, partially because Iran cannot tolerate Israeli governments on its borders. So that was a fascinating development that is going to continue.
No, definitely. And yeah, an interesting point you made earlier on about the US Congress, and of course, anti-Iran rhetoric will probably be ramped up during that time, but there's still quite a bit to go, right? I believe like it's in a year and 3 to 4 months, so they still have some time. Oh, I mean, that's when the election is, so of course,
they basically have 6 months or less before the election season starts.
Yeah.
Because you can't go into election season, voting for or supporting a deal with Iran.
That is true.
But yeah, to be honest, on the Kurdish issue, I'm hoping to make a specific video with more details. I just wanted to give the headlines right now, but just for people who might be interested, because it's not an issue that is, to be honest, attracting that much attention. All right, so shall I move on to our next region, the Levant?
Please.
All right. So I decided to call that the Levant brief because it mostly focuses on Syria and Lebanon. And again, as a good segue, I think we can start with the Iranian-Lebanese relations. So Lebanon is going through a major energy crisis, and it's causing a lot of problems in the country all over. I think we discussed it once before, the water crisis, energy
water
crisis.
Shortage too,
it's just Lebanon is very badly hit. And so far, what you had happening is that Hezbollah, who is a party, one of the parties that is part of the coalition of the ruling government, they independently imported fuel from Iran. They did that the first time, and then the prime minister, whose name is very difficult for me. Najib Mikati. He first time when Hezbollah imported fuel from Iran, he described it as a violation of the sovereignty of the Lebanese government and Lebanese nation. Although I think he may have just said that, he's in a very difficult position. He has to appease Saudi Arabia. His nation is in a very difficult position. So I think it was more of a rhetoric thing, because you had the second importation by Hezbollah from Iran, a second importation of fuel done recently, which was quite interesting.
And they need it, that's for sure. So
I mean, this one, to be honest, from the latest report I heard, it has arrived in Syria and it's supposed to arrive in Lebanon very soon. I don't know if it has arrived as of yet or not. But I would say, I mean, a lot of people see this again as a geopolitical thing and all that. But I think, again, like the Russia and Nord Stream, which we discussed in another country brief video, if you like, check it out. Again, this is more about actually energy and necessities, really. Because interestingly, what you had is, let me just read this. Syria agrees to help Lebanon import gas and electricity from Jordan and Egypt. So Jordan, Egypt, and Syria and Lebanon's energy ministers will meet in Amman in Jordan on Wednesday after Syria agreed to allow gas and electricity to pass through its territory to help Lebanon tackle its energy crisis, state media said. A delegation led by Lebanon's caretaker deputy prime minister Zain Akar, so this is before the election of the new guy, Syrian foreign minister Faisal Mikdad and oil minister Bassam Tomeh in Damascus on Saturday to finalize the details. Lebanon hopes to strike a deal to import gas from Egypt and electricity from Jordan using Syrian infrastructure. Beirut wants Washington's blessing despite the US imposing sanctions on Syrian regime. So we had a very similar story last summer in Iraq that everybody was accusing Iraq. Why are you buying energy from Iran? Why are you importing energy from Iran? It's because they offer the cheapest energy. Syria offers the cheapest infrastructure. It's the closest nation to Lebanon. Many people would argue Lebanon was created as a way to deny Lebanon access to Mediterranean Sea. So, like geography, infrastructure, all these things, Jordan and Egypt were two of the biggest backers of anti-Assad supporters during this Syrian civil war. But now they are meeting with them to provide, because it's all about the money in the end. It's all about the greens and, all that. So I thought that was an interesting story to put everything into the context of, Lebanese energy crisis at the moment.
No, definitely. Okay, so before we move on to our Progressive World Online part and also one or two viewer comments that we're going to discuss, there were two more countries that we forgot to talk about, Sam, right? So I'll just throw it back to you.
Yes, sorry about that. We teased them as well, so that was pretty shitty of me. But we have to talk about UAE and Saudi Arabia, mostly UAE. There were some interesting developments there, but let's call this our Khaliji brief or our Arabian Peninsula brief. But so first, let's start with United Arab Emirates. United Arab Emirates Prime Minister and Dubai ruler Sheikh Mohammed bin Rashid Al Maktoum. So just to give a tiny bit of context, usually the king of the president, the main guy, the boss of UAE is the ruler of Abu Dhabi, which has the most oil production and oil revenue and gas, energy and all that. But the prime minister and more executive and more marketing side is on the Dubai ruler, who's the prime minister, as I mentioned, Sheikh Mohammed bin Rashid Al Maktoum. He announced ministerial changes on Saturday, including new finance and environmental ministers. The United Arab Emirates appointed Dubai ruler's son as the country's finance minister as a part of a broader reorganization intended to speed up the pace of change in the Gulf nation. By the way, not a Gulf nation, Persian Gulf nation. Just a little bit of Iranian nationalism there. That's the technical term. So anyway, Sheikh Maktoum bin Mohammed will also hold the role of a deputy prime minister. So the son, we are talking about the son. He will be finance and deputy prime minister, according to tweets from Dubai's ruler on Saturday. As finance minister, he fills a position left vacant after death in March of Sheikh Hamdan bin Rashid. It's I don't know, but I would think there is a good chance this guy is being because Sheikh, the current ruler of Dubai, has many children. Some of them he tries to kidnap and all that. So, I don't know if anybody's familiar with his daughter's story and his wife's story and all that. But this guy is probably being groomed as the new prime minister or something. Other changes in the cabinet include Muhammad Hadi Al Hosseini becoming Minister of State for Financial Affairs. He replaces Obaid Al Tayer. Mariam Al Mehri becomes Minister for Climate Change and Environment. She keeps her role as a Minister of State for Food and Water, so double job. Abdul bin Sultan bin Awad Al Namai becomes Minister of Justice. He replaces Minister Sultan Al Badi. Abdul Rahman Alwar becomes Minister of Human Resources and Emiratization, which is sort of becoming Emirati. He replaces Nasser al-Hami. Abdullah al-Ketbi becomes Minister for Affairs of Federal Supreme Council. So, these are the big cabinet reshuffles in UAE. I don't think they reflect much changes, except the fact that we should expect the son of the ruler of Dubai to play a increasingly larger role in their politics.
Very interesting.
So, any questions? Anything on that? All right. So, moving to Saudi Arabia. Saudi Arabia had its national day, and for the first time, a woman partook in a military parade. In the year 2017, for the first time, women were allowed to attend Saudi National Day celebrations. But this time around, you had, I'm sure the pictures you have put up there, women appearing in military uniforms and in military
that's very interesting.
So, again, it's all marketing and PR for Saudi Arabia, but I suppose it's positive marketing.
Yeah. Better than, I guess it's better than not. I guess,
It's kind of like that famous cartoon of, they're dropping bombs on us, but now it's a transgender, gay, recognized.
Yeah.
Whatever.
Yeah. So I guess in that context, I guess positive, good step. But okay, very nice. So should we continue now with our viewer comments before we move on to Progressive World Online?
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah, so first let's do the longer comment. And so Colin Murphy wrote after our last video, I believe. He said that pretty sure Chomsky clearly said Russiagate had no evidence to support it. I don't see how that equates to him not caring. So, I don't think we talked about Chomsky, so that's like the only, I don't recall saying that.
No, I recall saying, I don't think Democracy Now! And others, specifically Democracy Now! Really, I don't think they care as much as many others about Russiagate. I don't recall talking about Chomsky at all, or maybe, I don't know. If we did, I don't know. I don't even know his position on Russiagate. I'm sure Colin Murphy's probably right.
Yeah. And then the second one is, so I had said in response, because Ilhan Omar said that, we should stop selling weapons. She tweeted, we should stop selling weapons to human rights violators. And I said that's childish. And by that I meant, and he wrote, don't sell arms to people who violate human rights. What's childish about this? The childish fact, what I was referring to is that since most countries commit human rights violations, all countries commit human rights violations.
Sorry, wait. Any government organization, you want to call it a state, you want to call it a corporation, you want to call it a co-op, whatever the fuck you want to call, religious grouping, cult, whenever they have the opportunity, they get their hands on arms, they commit that. They violate human rights.
Yeah, most
so
likely.
I don't think you were, I think you were very correctly categorizing that as childish.
Yeah, because it's not, you can't execute it because every country. So, and that's the thing, like her suggestion, which is to not sell arms to human rights violators, it equates to not selling arms at all then, which is, that's a good idea.
We had another commenter whom I think he gave a couple of educational stuff to me a couple of times. Hot Bunny, I don't know. Anyway, I'm sorry. He said maybe don't manufacture weapons. Okay, maybe that's a reasonable.
No,
that's not a childish position. You know, but then I would say, okay, but what about the unilaterally? That's difficult.
Yeah.
Even
what I had thought. I thought of becoming a world leader now. I have a childish suggestion. I have a childish suggestion. Nobody would ever want. It would be impossible to implement this because so much money is also made in this industry. Let's not forget. So the vested interest to not. Which is to cap like weapon sales.
We are like.
Yeah. I guess one solution could be to just cap weapon sales in general. So, I mean, globally, your countries, I don't know how you'd come up with that.
No,
You can only buy and sell this much weapon, and that's it, no matter
no,
which country you are or who you are. But yeah, just a thought
I
that I
think
had.
that I
Maybe
think that
that's
would just
childish too.
cause a lot of series of loopholes and all that. I think the best way is you're not allowed to export weapons. I think that would be good.
Yeah, I like that too.
And again, but then you have to, you have to deal with the whole like invasions and all that on a whole different basis.
Yeah.
And then just, you're not allowed to export weapons. Maybe that's a great, I don't know.
Yeah, that's not
But
bad
at
one
the
too.
same
But
time,
yeah.
then at the same time, that will lead to, for example, a lot of weak nations not being able to get defensive, let's say.
Yeah.
It's a very hard one unless the word acts as one. But what I just wanted to say, I think it is extremely childish to say don't sell weapons to human rights violators. Who are human rights violators? According to US, it's Iran, China, and Russia.
Yeah.
According to China, it's US, Britain, and France.
And according to the UN human rights, they pretty
and
much
UN can
violations, but they find violations in every country anyway. So if you go according to them, actually, the next question relates. So the next one, he's like, ostensibly, many countries buy weapons for their national defense, but don't use them to violate human rights. And then he picks Norway, Sweden, and Denmark.
They don't have a chance.
But do they not? If they took part in the Iraq and Afghanistan wars, did they take part as part of NATO in that way?
I think some of them sent some troops in they would, some typists, I believe. Look, I mean, come on, man, Scandinavia used to be the home of Vikings. I'm sure if they have the chance, they would use them and also, as harshly as United States. This idea, by the way, like, there is people don't make choices. Even the most anyway, I'm sorry, I'm just getting very philosophical.
Let's just continue so we wrap up with this comment. I think that's it. Then it says that Status Quo have a great breakdown of why Nina Turner lost.
I haven't seen that, by the way.
Perhaps I haven't seen it. And then he's like, not a fan of Anna, but why are you going after her when Dore's initial post was lazy and stupid? But Jimmy Dore didn't have a post. What we posted was Anna tweeting about someone who had taken a clip from Jimmy Dore. It wasn't actually Jimmy Dore's post. So, I mean, I don't even know, again, here what the person is saying. But yeah, that's that.
They probably misunderstood.
I think you had also sent another comment that you wanted to...
I love this comment. I thought this was the best comment ever.
There we go. So it's right here. A country's terrorist output is measured by defense spending divided by horseshit multiplied by imagination. So this was, again, in which context of which story of us it was? You think this was in response to... I think because I was talking about war on terror.
Okay, terror is bullshit. You can't concepts and all that.
Oh yeah.
I love that.
But it's
like the human rights violation thing. It's like, I'm sorry, but I mean, this probably pisses off a couple of left. Like, human rights are such subjective concepts, and sometimes lefties talk about them as if they're 10 commandments given to Moses by God, and it's
but anyway, thank you everybody for commenting, including people who will respond to
but who
right
commented
away.
That I think
so the first one is also the first one that we went over is Colin Murphy, so thank you to Colin Murphy as well. No, and the second one,
interesting question.
The second one is Michael Besser, I believe. Yeah,
that was awesome.
Yeah, it was funny. But okay, Sam, let's move on. Let's move on to let's do the Gerald Horne one with his interview.
Let's move on to the progressive online world.
Sorry about that. Let's first move on to Progressive World Online. And we have two stories. The second one is going to be small, just AOC and her voting present. So we'll leave that for after. But first, let's start. Okay, Sam, what was this interview even about? Let me try to first have a go at it, and then you have a go at it before we give our opinions. So Bad Faith Podcast Brianna had another, I think, really fun and informative interview, but as I mentioned in the intro, a bit hard to follow at times. And she had the interview with Gerald Horne. He's a professor, and more specifically, he's a historian. And in this one, he actually talks a lot about his interests, kinda. And he thinks that a lot of historians in the US, they're very like focused on like 20 to 30 year period, whereas he looks at pretty much everything from the 15th century onwards. He said he even has written a book about the 16th century. So he talks a lot about US history, and I know he also writes about he's written books about Brazil and its history. So he's a historian. And Brianna, I guess, tried to launch it. And like the main question that she asked, and in the description of the video, is can people on the left be patriotic? And does patriotism go with left-wing ideology? I believe that's where she wanted the conversation to go. And he kind of answered that in one go in the first question. And then he just moved on to other things that are super interesting, which we'll talk about. But before we do all that, Sam, do you think, what was the conversation about, or what was it? What did Brianna want it to be about? How about that?
I agree with you that the main topic of the conversation seemed to be about the fact that can patriotism be redefined in a way that that includes social values of the left or progressive or whatever values that Brianna Greyjoy and people like Mr. Horne, Professor Horne, subscribe to. I think that was the main issue of the discussion. So what was your question?
But yeah, before, so we talk about other things that are interesting. This was the main thing that she tried to ask, and I guess this is the answer that he gave, I believe, and then we can move on. You want to say something, or do you want me to?
No.
Try to paraphrase
go ahead. Yeah, paraphrase.
Yeah. And first of all, he was a bit fiery, I found him to be. And like he told Brianna, like
he's
so
always
many times,
fired.
Yeah, I know, this time more. And he was like, well, I just explained that. But I'm like, maybe you think you did, but clearly Brianna didn't get it, and I didn't quite get it, to be completely honest, at times. So you can maybe have another go. But
no,
he
look, I'm yeah.
He didn't find it to be that much of an interesting question. He kind of said, well, listen, if you want to have the American flag behind you, but you still okay with these progressives and left policies that I want, then everything's good. But of course, I don't prescribe to patriotism because I know to this version of patriotism because I know what like the national anthem, what it's about. And he's like, I don't prescribe to the whole narrative built after 1776. But he's like, yeah, sure. And then he was kind of done with that question. And Brianna tried to reintroduce it a few more times. And pretty sure that's all he said really about that. He was kind of like, yeah, sure, have a flag. I don't mind as long as you like leftist policies.
Yeah. And look, first of all, I think Brianna Greyjoy comes from the right place, and I agree with her tactics, but sadly, I don't think it would have any, like, even if you approach people with a more first of all, they mentioned that in the video that itself, they should really define patriotism.
Mm-hmm.
What do we mean by patriotism? Do we mean nationalism, or do we mean loyalty to a idea? If it's a loyalty to an idea, then I like to think it's a good thing. But if they mean nationalism, to be honest, I really agree with Professor Horne. I think you are being naive when you put it's not that you're being bad person if you still subscribe to whatever good policies, whatever that may be. Let's put aside that. But when you put a flag behind you, when you think American Constitution is a special, unique text, as a lot of people on the left, including people anti-YT and a lot of other people think so, I think you're naive and you're childish, and you're in politics in the same way that majority of people are into soccer or football. in a way that, you know a couple of names and things, but you don't really understand this stuff. So yeah, I agree with Brianna Greyjoy. You probably can convince more people through, they mentioned that guy, the guy who they play a clip of him that says real patriotism is that. Well, yeah, you can wish real patriotism is that, but majority of people who call themselves patriots are not like that. They are actually subscribed to a somewhat nationalistic, racist ideology, and that's not just true for US. That's true for a lot of places.
Everywhere. Yeah.
So yeah, I agree with the sentiment, and I agree that we can convince more people with those type of language at some points, perhaps, especially middle class people. But at this point, who gives a shit about convincing them anymore? And does it matter? And I mean, these, again, that's why I don't like, again, that's why I'm not necessarily for mass democracy, like, because you can never convince enough people. Like, it's too late now anyway. But just, yeah, like, who gives a shit, like, about convincing a bunch of idiots who want to put flags behind them? Like, yeah, go vote for Republicans. Go ahead, go vote against your interest. It's fuck off.
Well, I mean, you're being a bit cynical.
I mean,
yeah.
I'm not cynical, but
yeah.
And then Gerald, Professor J keeps saying, okay, do whatever you want, but you keep trying to convince me that I should tone down my rhetoric because those people.
Do you think she was trying to do that? Do you think she was trying to like convince him with a point? Yeah.
I don't know. From the last two interviews I saw on Bad Faith with Norman Finkelstein and Gerald Horne, I feel like Brianna Greyjoy, and again, I am very sympathetic to her position, and I think she's probably the best interviewer and best analyst on YouTube right now. But I think she keeps trying to argue that if we not in action, just rhetorically, if we tone down a bit, maybe we can win over more people.
I see,
and I and she's probably right, but in terms of middle class people at the moment, but I think at the moment we live in such radical times, and to be honest, I think we are living the end of history. So
what do you mean by
that? I mean, after like Francis Fukuyama shit, like everything is like we're living in a whole globalized capitalist system, and it's all internal contradiction. It's just, there is no dialectic anymore. I mean, it's all bullshit philosophical stuff. But again, I'm very, very sympathetic to Brianna Greyjoy. Fantastic interview, fantastic questions. You feel like you learn shit. You feel like you are getting to know a perspective that is valuable. But yeah,
no, for sure. I mean, so speaking of that, I mean, so then they put that aside, and then Gerald Horne, I guess, talks about some stuff. Well, not aside, but I mean, he talks for it's like an hour-long interview about other things that he sees that important that the left don't think about. And I mean, one part in the middle, he starts talking about internationalism.
He talks about. He talks about the agency of the people who vote, which a lot of leftists don't.
Yeah, no, he talks about that, and he talks about internationalism, which I think we should come back to
of course.
for a second. But yeah, and then settler colonialism, that's like the main thing that he came back to, and he's like, we don't talk about enough how the US is a nation of settler colonialism. And I feel like I was thinking of the critical race theory arguments and all that. Do you think Gerald Horne would agree with what Adolph Reed says? Because it seemed like for him, for Gerald Horne, I think the main thing he was saying is that there's like a coalition that all kind of European background Americans all kind of have a form of coalition, and that's why some classes within that, they don't mind voting against their own interests because they try to, because they fall within this category. And yes, what did you make of all that? Do you think he would like agree
or
am I mixing conversations, maybe like discussions?
I think we are, of course, a little bit, but but I haven't read enough. I've read some stuff of Adolf Reed, but I haven't read anything from Gerald Horne, to be honest. I've only seen interviews and lectures, and I would think his focus uh, on history and on
Slavery,
race.
Jim Crow, like
Wait,
yeah, in the US.
history and race would be more. Well, while Adolf Reed is
Mm,
probably more focused on economics and class, I would think. Uh, but the level of like overlap between them and
yeah.
all that, I have no idea. But I do think his arguments about settler colonial, like I do think, yeah, like I love to. I'm definitely gonna read his stuff on that,
Yeah.
because yeah, I think that mindset is a special mindset.
But okay, and then I think the most interesting thing for me that he really brought up, and I guess we talk about since forced to vote and all this, a lot about, what's good strategies and all this, what activists should do. And he's not an activist himself, but I don't believe he really is. But his main point, his main criticism of activism and what they can do is that he says that the ones in America are extremely domestic focused, and they don't try to make partnerships with other groups outside of the country. And it's like, in fact, we don't take into consideration how much like internationalism and the fact of being like, not liking the way America is being projected elsewhere, how much of impact that had to, removing Jim Crow and all this. So it's like, and he kept on talking about this like African Union that happened recently in this meeting, and he's like, sorry, this like summit, and he's like, there were no one from like the US left, from like civil society groups from the US. So yeah, I mean, one of his main points and arguments was that, that in the US, activists don't give any shit right now about what's, about trying to make partnerships with people in other countries, with activists in other countries, and having kind of this international perspective. And yet, to finish on this, I think he talks about how this, until the Jim Crow, it was like this, but then kind of deal was made to, put aside having this international look and, just focusing domestically and building coalitions domestically. I don't know if I butchered that argument a bit, or yeah, now what do you think about it?
No, I think he correct. For example, there is, again, in my view, uh, people might hate this. In my view, there is a romanticization of Dr. King, and all these Civil War, 1960s, all these internal struggles. While in my view, and uh, some other people's view, and my view is a least of importance to anybody, uh, including myself, is that international pressures may have had a more important role in the end of, for example, Jim Crow and apartheid later on and all
Well,
that, or
apartheid,
at
that's
least they
that's admitted. Apartheid is admitted, but in the US
apartheid is
context, it's
definitely,
not talked about as much. That is true. His point was made a lot of
yeah,
sense
in
right
the
there. Yeah.
uh, yeah, and it's, yeah, yeah, that's I mean, I again, that's what pisses me off, because like Brianna Greyjoy, I believe she was a former lawyer, kind of like Glenn Greenwald, and I like, these are the two people I find the most entertaining to watch, to be honest, because they make cases like lawyers, and I am so
Mm,
sympathetic to them. But at the same time, I think, sadly, yeah, I mean, it's just in this specific case, like I just don't think we can, winning over people is not enough anymore.
mhm.
Like, and it's not, it doesn't seem to, like, even if you have the best arguments, they don't care. So
And I
they're
think
they're
Gerald
not
Horne
gonna
was
come.
kind of saying that, right? He was like,
Yeah.
he's saying, yeah, I mean, I guess build international coalitions, I guess shame the US at an international level, and maybe down the line you'll achieve one small thing that you're fighting for.
And
I mean,
and
and he
and
says,
he
of course, sorry, he says, of course, domestic coalitions and pressure and all that is important. He just says that it's completely the international part, and the international situation is often ignored by activists and leftists, which, I mean, I'm not part of these groups or all that, but from the outside, his argument may seem to make sense based on what you see.
yeah,
and rooted in reality.
yeah, yeah. But yeah. By the way, I remember a couple of weeks ago we had a comment saying that we are like a Brianna Greyjoy or Bad Faith like fan club. So hopefully somebody watches this. But yeah,
You want to hear something
I
funny about that?
Sure.
The person left that comment under like the one video that wasn't about Brianna. So I was gonna say, so I said, okay, thank you. And I was gonna say that too, but then I was like, I'm not gonna be an ass, but I was gonna be like, there's like 3 videos surrounding this one that's about Brianna. You picked this one. That has nothing to do about that to leave that comment.
Oh, it was a UK brief.
Yeah.
Yes.
Taliban.
Okay,
Afghanistan. But yeah. But yeah, the
but
discussion
great,
was hard to follow. People need to go listen to it for themselves. Yeah.
Yeah, hard to follow, but I think worth every data cost that you pay. I don't know. It was such a good interview.
Yeah, I know for sure. For sure. But okay, Sam. So let's move on if you have nothing to say and quickly talk about AOC. So last time when we filmed the video, yeah, did you have anything else you wanted to say about?
No, I have something to say about AOC.
Yeah. So last time when we made the video and me so as soon as we made what? Go ahead.
Yeah, exactly. One time I take my off of a country and you lead us into this story that we defend somebody for
how do we defend
her? 2 minutes. Did we defend?
No.
I feel like we said they achieved something, and then as soon as we stop recording, I open my YouTube and it's like no,
but
they
maybe
betrayed.
you weren't listening. No, maybe you weren't listening clearly to what I was saying because I kept on saying because I kept on saying it's a very temporary. It is extremely temporary because they're going to now have a separate bill just to pass that 1 billion. And it's going to happen. So actually, it played out just the way as I said.
To everything you say.
Well, I thought that was the case, but yeah. So I mean, based on what I had read and I said, that's exactly how it was going to happen. I just didn't know the vote was happening right then. And then I guess AOC in the last minute, what happened is that she switched to present instead of no. Apparently she was going to vote no. And of course, Glenn Greenwald. Yeah, and then they put out videos of her like apparently crying, and then she released this huge like explanation, which I'll mention 1 or 2 things. But yeah, Glenn Greenwald also made a video before she actually put out an explanation. And the point, it's called like 2 questions, but his main point is that AOC, you're a hypocrite. Because she told Tulsi Gabbard not to ever vote president, that fools do that, or cowards do that. And she did the same. And then he also points out how, you go out there and you say you're against, you defund the police, you support defund the police, but then you vote for a bill that increases police funding and for the capital.
I must say, as a person, look, all these politicians in Congress, I don't know any of them personally, but AOC
people believe you there.
Keeps No, but AOC seems to be living her personality a bit more online, and I cannot say how much I loathe her. I loathe her as a person, and it just disgusts me. People like her disgust me, and I'm gonna connect the whole Met Gala and this thing together, explain why if you want. But I don't know, what's your take first?
That's a definitely good idea. No, I mean, it's all show and stuff. So I'll just finish with my part to then pass it back to you. And of course, that whole explanation that you put out, the 4 pages and stuff, as Glenn Greenwald and Aaron Matte pointed out, it doesn't actually explain why she voted present.
It does in a way, but
I didn't find that. I found 1 or 2
excuses. It gives 2 excuses.
No, I mean, I did, just like Glenn said, she does a good job of pointing out why they shouldn't be funding it, but then she voted present anyway. She says, and let me just finish this. And then she points out how much money is being sent for Iron Dome right here, like almost half as much as being like given over like a 10-year span. So it's a lot. So that was only one thing that caught my attention. And then the second thing that caught my attention was that she has this vague thing where she talks about community, like the whole thing, that whole community part was such bullshit. I'm like, what are you even talking about? I've never been this confused. Like the whole community part was so annoying. But yeah, that's that.
Well, again, to be fair to her, because I'm going to destroy her, hopefully, or at least try to dismantle her arguments later on. I destroyed this bullshit word. Sorry. But to be fair to her, she, in her 4-page fucking essay, in rambling essay, I think if you want to be very, very generous to her, she's pointing out to 2 reasons why she voted present. One was that the bill was rushed. So she keeps saying, I tried to get more time to discuss the thing and all that. 2, the community wake thing you say, as somebody who's been reading this bourgeois sort of bullshit, sort of spin language for years, she's basically saying that I didn't want to divide my community by voting, like divide the left community, because leftist community obviously includes a huge number of Jewish people, because Jewish people have been Jews and Scandinavians have basically been people who have brought socialism to the US and have been one of the bigger supporters of not socialism, like leftist policies, let's say, right? So I think that's what she's referring to when the vague comments you say about community and all that. But that's that. So now, finishing, to be fair to her, I think she's clearly established herself through a series of actions, including the Met Gala dress thing and this thing with the crying, especially with the crying and the present vote. Not so much with, like, if she had voted yes and not cried, I would have not felt this much disgust, in my view. By the way, Anna Kasparian and Nando Villa, if I'm not mistaking it, on Jacobin, in my view, they do this is somebody we criticized a lot, Anna Kasparian, but I think they do a great takedown of her appearance, especially Nando person. Sorry, I forget his last name. He has a very cute dog like yours, and I think she's a creation of she has created herself for television, and it's obvious from that program she recently did with CNN, MSNBC, with one of them, and it's all a show. The Met Gala, like, go to Met Gala, like, there's this joke. There was this joke that there is more politics happening in the corridors of UN summit than actual, like, the meetings and all that. And maybe Met Gala is like that. You go there, you lobby some rich people to pay more taxes, whatever. But when you start putting tax the rich on your dress, when you vote present, which is neither yes nor no, and then you cry and hug people so the cameras can catch you. Because we all can cry. We all fucking cry every night with fucking ice creams in a hot tub. We all do that, right? Because we all, the whole world is going through a depression crisis. But you are a congresswoman of the most powerful nation in the world, and you choose to cry and embrace people in front of cameras. So this is all a fucking act. And I cannot, like, even people like Mitch McConnell, who are far more, like, open about their disgusting and disgraceful views, I find them more tolerable, because there is something more. That's why I think some people, like, it's just, there's something more disgusting, more loathsome about people who are two-faced.
I mean, which really seems like being the case. So I mean, I agree with your take, because it really, like, the more we see of AOC and these concrete examples that you pointed out, she seems to be like, of course all politicians are show, but she's like, show plus. Like,
by the way, Chuck Schumer is somebody who's been in the pocket of Wall Street, like, he's been, but look at his performance, look at the way he presents himself, look at the way he talks, look at the way he maneuvers. At least you can say Chuck Schumer is a real fucking politician. He knows how to talk. AOC doesn't even seem to know her base. I don't know what the fuck she. I mean, she's doing it for the money, of course. But I think you could have played a longer game. You know, at least you don't have to sell out within 3 minutes.
Man, you know, that's very interesting. You just said she doesn't know who her base is because she's only had one election, right? She only had one election, if I'm not mistaken, right?
Yeah.
So, and that was
two.
She had two, but the second one was very soon after the first one, if I'm not mistaken.
Yes, but the thing is, unless there is a real surprise challenger in the New York primary, if you win the Democratic New York primary, you have that job for the rest of your life, pretty much.
Yeah, that's true.
Just like the Crawley.
Yeah, but yeah, it'd be interesting to see. It'd be interesting to see if any sentiment, how much they've changed. You know, because of course, the first time she got voted up, and the second time she was voted too. The first time she had no history. There was nothing on her, and she ran as this super leftist. So it'll be interesting to see really where she's at the next time she does an election.
But the long-term effect of politicians like her are that the people who voted for her and brought her to office by coming out for the first time and
will double down.
Crawley will be disappointed in politics and will say, okay, we came out, we voted for this young person who claimed to value everything we value, but she betrayed everything within 3 years. So why should we even vote for somebody new? So even if you have somebody who's genuine and who's gonna stick to their principle, I don't know, people are gonna come out and show up again. I don't know. She's the worst of the worst. People like her cause the most long-term damage to politics, in my view, more so than people like Mitch McConnell, who at least serve their base, even if their base is like 3 billionaires in Texas.
I see. No, fair enough. Their point taken. But I guess you loathe AOC, I think, just as much as Glenn Greenwald, or maybe.
Not AOC. Look, I want to make this clear. Julian Assange makes this. I don't know AOC personally. Seems like a very pleasant person. I'm sure if we were in a gathering together, very pleasant, nice person.
Possibly.
Her actions as a politician are, in my view, are very negative and loathsome. That's all. It's just, so far, I don't want to. This is not a personal. I don't know anything about anyone's personal life. So yeah.
Yeah, no. So far, really, does seem to be the case. But okay, Sam. If you have nothing else to add there, did you have anything else, or should we move on to the progressive tweets and just 2 small tweets to wrap up today's episode of the Progressive World? And people, if you've watched so far and you've been watching the show more or less often, so consider not only liking, but of course subscribing. It makes a world of difference just by making us extra happy. So there's even that, even if it doesn't help too much with algorithm or anything. But okay, Sam, the first tweet that we have is by Bernie Sanders. So he wrote, the Republican Party, who added 7.8 trillion to the national debt under President Trump, wants you all to believe they are very, very serious about the national debt now, that we are going to be taxing the wealthy to help the working class of this country. So just 2 things I wanted to say this. One, I guess this isn't a surprise to anyone, but the whole debt thing, the way it's talked about, is complete bullshit when it comes up to the US national debt. So that's bullshit. But I remember once I was so shocked. So when there was the Romney and Obama election, so that election I was in university and we were in Canada, but there was this kid and he really liked the Republican Party, right? And he was having a debate with the professor. And he was like, yeah, but what about the debt? What about the national debt? I was just shocked at how much this person thought that was an issue. You know what I mean? He didn't only think that, having too much debt, the US government to a debt is an issue. For him, it was of such importance. I was just shocked that someone could care about an issue that is quite abstract, right? I mean, national debt of another country. For you to think that
Look,
is so important, I just remember finding it really funny.
I think the fact of the matter is the only country that should not care about its national debt is US. Every other nation should, though, because US is the only nation that, well, the international trade is done on dollars. So basically, US can print as much money as they want and go to as much as debt they want, really without feeling the inflation of it, at least short to medium term. So, but yeah. So in a way, yeah. But if it was any other nation, though, that does matter.
I would add one thing. And of course, there are consequences after a certain
my
point.
headphones may run out of battery.
Okay.
So, yeah.
Well, if they do, if not, we just have one more tweet that I just want to say two things. I mean, of course, yes, after certain limit, there could be inflation issues or things like that. But I wouldn't say only the US.
And a different nation.
Based on what I understand, is countries who are currency issuers, so they have their own currency. For them, national debt can't be that much of an issue because, of course, they can always print and solve it if they need to. So it can become an issue. But yeah, I don't think only the US. I think countries who can, for instance, Greece couldn't bail itself out because it had to ask the EU and Germany. But if it had its own currency, it could have bailed itself out, and then maybe would have had other issues. But
no. But that's limited, though. For example, you can look at Black Wednesday in 1990s Britain, where British pound, basically George Soros pretty much devalued British pound by half or something. Yes, you're right, but that is also my headphone has ran out, so I'm just
go ahead, change it
to myself until. But yeah, just to not bore people, but you are completely right that as long as you can print your own money, you have more flexibility. But US has far more flexibility due to the fact that it's the international the international currency. Yeah, I can hear.
No, 100%. Can you hear me now?
Yeah.
Yeah, no, 100%. And one last thing, of course,
seamless.
Yeah, no, that was very well. You're getting good at that. And last thing before we move to the next tweet, of course, comparing thinking that national or country debt is the same thing as household debt, or of course like
that's
the worst
comparison
economic simile ever. Yeah. Anyway, let's move on to our last tweet. Cenk Uygur was fired up. But I mean, Kyle Kalinske is always talking about Dave Rubin. I don't think we've ever talked about him. I mean, he's
Sam
unreal.
Cedar usually.
But damn, anyway, let's read the tweets in
he's
order.
The most, Dave Rubin is the most pathetic piece of shit human being that has
just look at his tweet. It makes absolutely no sense. Bernie Sanders had tweeted, in America, elderly people should not be walking around without teeth in their mouth and should not be able to afford to go to a dentist. He tweets in response, so sell one of your 3 houses and get an implant, you old windbag. I mean, like,
Jesus.
What? And he wrote that this is Cenk, you're this piece of shit who pretended to be on the left to get a job with us. What a fucking liar. Was your house paid for by right-winger bigots? Worth it, you trash slut, whatever. But I mean, the Dave Rubin guy, like, his tweet doesn't even make any sense. And I mean, some people tweeted saying that Dave Rubin doesn't understand, like, because Cenk always makes this point that Republicans only think about themselves. So Dave Rubin, perhaps he thinks like Bernie Sanders is worried about himself, which is of course not the case. But I mean, I'll just give it back to you in a second. But damn, this Dave Rubin tweet has to be like one of the dumbest I've seen.
To be honest, Joe Rogan did a thing, I think, with Dave Pacman and Dave Rubin. And I sometimes feel like he may be right that Dave Rubin may be just genuinely mentally like not very capable. And I cannot think of again, like, it's like AOC, somebody I call these people hucksters, grifters, whatever. Like generally, AOC, Dave Rubin are, in my mind, are. I know the term has been overused, but in my mind, they are grifter and huckster. Like, if you open a dictionary, they see their picture. Dave Rubin is so pathetic that I think, to be honest, Cenk mentioning right wingers is a bit unfair as well, because most right wingers or most
No.
centrists are also ignoring him. Sam Harris even doesn't want, like, nobody wants to associate with him because he's just such a fool. He's somebody who wants to be famous. He tried a stand-up comedy, he failed. He tried to be a left-winger, he failed. He tried to be a liberal, he failed. Now he's trying to be a conservative and he's failing.
But he's succeeding at making some money somehow, though. He has a show and
he succeeds
put out a
in a
bullshit book.
short-term funding from PragerU and Koch brothers or whatever. But as a human being, I cannot think of a bigger failure. As somebody who's a homosexual and then interviews people who consider homosexuals pretty much living sin, and then begs them to come to their parties, and then Ben Shapiro is like, no, I'm not going to come to your wedding, whatever. And then it's just, he's so pathetic. Like, people like him are the
no, I can't disagree with you there. He's seriously, he's unbearable. I mean, I think I've listened to him for a total of 10 minutes in my life, thankfully, luckily, but Joe
Rogan,
just some clips here and there,
secular talk.
But okay, Sam, we've reached the end of today's show. Had a lot of
You're ending on a sad note.
No. And some Progressive World Online, some tweets. So people, please like and subscribe. But of course, more importantly, leave your comments, questions, and criticisms down below, and we'll make sure to get to them. But if not, like and subscribe, and we'll see you in our next video. Thank you very much.